Hello everybody, Melissa Boer-Jacobson here with Awesome Kid Auditions, and I'm so grateful and happy that you've decided to join me for this webinar this evening. And I'm going to give you a lot of great information, probably a good idea to grab something to write with, a pen, paper, or maybe your note-taking on your phone or your laptop or your iPad, because we're going to be sharing a lot of really valuable information tonight. So let's go ahead and get started. First of all, let me just tell you quickly a little bit about myself and my history around coaching. I have been coaching for many years, over 20 years, and for the last 13 years or so I've been working very frequently with children who are auditioning for Bach Middle School of the Arts and Dreyfus School of the Arts. Some of my earlier successes have now graduated college, as a matter of fact, and I have literally hundreds of kids that I have worked with that have gone through Bach and Dreyfus and are now at different parts of their educational journey. Now, I come to be able to do this kind of coaching because I come from the professional theater world myself. I am not only a professional performer myself, but I have also performed and directed in professional theaters all over the country. I served as the director of social media and marketing and also the director of education for a local theater company here in the Palm Beach County area. I've done a lot of producing, a lot of directing. I've taught thousands of kids in various summer performing arts programs. And I absolutely love what I do. It is my passion to instill confidence and competence in people of all ages, but especially in children who are entering middle school and high school. I work out of my home studio, which is located in Palm Beach Gardens, not far from the Gardens Mall. And I also have locations in Delray Beach and in Wellington. I have some limited hours in those locations. I have a very, very high success rate. This past year, my success rate hovered between 90 and 100%, depending on which program you're talking about. I did coach several Dreyfus kids. Every single one of my Dreyfus kids got into the program of their choice, and I had about a 90% success rate with both my communication and my theater students who were entering Bach. So that was pretty wonderful. Over the years, my success rate has never dipped below about 80%. It's usually between 80 and 90 to 100%. What do I do besides prepping youngsters for Bach and Dreyfus? I do a lot of other things as well. I'm also a private vocal coach, instructor. That means I teach people how to sing with great technique and confidence and competence. I also teach acting, and of course, in addition to audition prep, I also work with executives, entrepreneurs, and leaders around speaking and presenting with competence, confidence, and comfort. So if you need any of those resources, I'd be happy to help you and talk to you about how I can help you with that. In the meantime, let's go on to our next part. Next application is the application process. So the deadline for the applications, if you don't know this already, for both Bach and Dreyfus, and really the choice program in general, there's a separate deadline for any other programs in the choice program. But for Bach and Dreyfus, the deadline is usually early to mid-December. It's an online application. You'll be notified by email that they received your application, but always a good idea to double check with the choice office and make sure they got your information. There's no grade eligibility requirements for these schools. There are some requirements for other choice programs. So if you're putting, say, another program like Suncoast or perhaps a finance magnet program, you might want to check and make sure, because some of those other choice programs do have grade eligibility requirements. The notification of your actual audition dates, the dates that your child will actually be going to do their auditions, is going to come to you via email or snail mail for Dreyfus. For Bach, you're going to need to go in person on a specific Saturday that they will email you about. You'll go either in the morning or the afternoon, and they will have you come in person to register your child for their audition date and time. Now, especially if your child is auditioning for Bach, please make sure that you bring proof of your IEP or your child's IEP, 504 plan, or their gifted status, because they will need that for your audition. Because if your child has an IEP or a 504 plan, they will get some special accommodations during the audition. And if they're not given those accommodations, then you have grounds for what's called an appeal or a re-audition. So that's very, very, very important. And we can talk more about these specifics of these questions when we meet in person, or if you want to schedule a phone call with me. A free assessment by phone is a great thing to do. Let's move on to the next topic. Let's talk about this lottery. There's so many common misconceptions around the lottery, and I want to clear up some of the more common ones. People think that everybody is thrown into the lottery, and it's, some people think that if your child has got a sibling at Bach, then they're automatically going to be able to go to school, or they're going to have a much better chance. Let me clarify that point. Or if you go to Bach, or say you go to Plumosa Elementary, or you go to what's called a strand school like UB Kinsey, that you're automatically going to be entered, you're automatically going to be qualified, and that is not the case. However, if your child does go to one of those strand schools, they are given a priority preference in the lottery. If you have a sibling already at one of these schools, they also get a priority preference in the lottery for that. So that does help, but it doesn't guarantee anything. There is something called the 20% rule, which means that the principal can choose the top 20% of the applicants based on their scores and automatically accept them into the program without them ever going into the lottery. But that is up to the principal, and it really depends on how many high scores there are for a given department. So for example, if there's 5 perfect scores for the theater department at Bach, she might say, hey, you know what, let's just let those 5 kids who got perfect scores in, and the rest of the qualifying scores will just go into the lottery and will be chosen at random. So that's basically how the lottery works. It's basically a giant hat. If your child has a qualifying score, then their name is tossed into that hat and they are picked at random. If your child has a qualifying score, but they are not picked, then they go onto a waiting list, and you'll be notified by email about that. The art areas that I cover are communication, theater, and vocal. I have expertise in all 3 of those areas, and so I do coach in all 3 of them. So let's talk now about audition guidelines. We're going to talk first very quickly about the Bach audition guidelines, and then we'll come back to the Dreyfus guidelines. So let's just start there. So the guidelines for Bach around communications, theater, and vocal. Before I launch into these guidelines, I do want to say that the guidelines are published every year anew around the first week of October. So I'm going to give you the current guidelines, and they are subject to change. And sometimes they change a little bit, and sometimes they change a lot. But here's how they are right now. The communication audition, each child will do a 15-minute creative writing prompt. They will also be given 3 minutes to prepare an impromptu 1-minute speech. And they will also be asked to create a 8x10 magazine ad for a specific product that they will be provided with the name of the product itself, and a picture of the product that will be provided at the audition, and they will be asked to design a magazine ad for that picture and that product. For the theater program at Bach, they will be doing a workshop type audition where they will be given a scene to prepare. They will be given 10 minutes to prepare that scene. They will be partnered with another auditioner, and they will present that scene to the entire group. They will very often be given an adjustment of some kind. And then they will be given a choice of a cold reading, usually a monologue or a scene, Or if they choose, they can learn a song that will be taught right there at the audition, and they will be performing that song at the audition. The vocal department requirements are one folk song. There's a set of recommended arrangements of folk songs. I have those recordings in my studio. I have the sheet music for those songs in my studio, and each child is required to sing one selection. They are to bring in recorded accompaniment, and they will be also asked to match some pitches, usually a series of pitches, a scale, 3, 4, or 5 different pitches. So let's move on. I know we're going through this very quickly, but we will definitely be able to ask questions later in the webinar around all of these, so just keep taking your notes and we'll go over the questions. Let's move on to Dreyfus now. Very quickly, the Dreyfus Audition Guidelines, as they stand right now, for the communication auditions, each auditioner is required to do a 1-minute, exactly 1-minute prepared speech that they bring from home. They can either have it on note cards or they can memorize it. I recommend that they memorize it. They also do a writing prompt. They have a 20-minute creative writing prompt. And then they do either a storyboard for a film, or they do a movie poster, and then finally they are participating in an interview with staff members from the department. For the theater department, it's a little bit more complicated. There are 3 tracks in the theater department: musical theater, acting, and tech. So each student will choose one of those areas in theater. For the musical theater track, each student is required to do 2 16-bar cuts of Broadway material, contrasting one from the contemporary theater and one from the more classical, legit theater, and I can certainly help you with choosing that material and knowing what that's all about. They also participate in a dance audition session. I can help you with resources around that as well. And then they are participating again in an interview with members of the Dreyfus staff. For the vocal department, each performer is required to sing a selection, and then they are required to do some sight singing. So if your child is interested in the vocal department, make sure that they're getting training now on sight singing, and I can certainly help you with that. I do teach that as well. There's some great resources at both Bach and Dreyfus. They are the magnet coordinators. They're wonderful people. They're some of my favorite people. And for Bach, we have Mr. Lee Glaze. He is one of my favorite guys. He's always ready to return your phone call. He's very efficient. He answers all your questions. And then we have Mr. Marshall at Dreyfus, and he's also really wonderful. I have a great relationship with both of these gentlemen, and I ask them lots of questions. They know what I do, and they're very supportive in helping me help my students do their best. Okay, let's talk about choices. The questions. There's 3 questions that I want each of your children to ask themselves. If they go on a tour, they're a potential Bach student, they go on a tour, I want them to go on that tour, and then I want them to ask themselves these 3 questions in this order. If they're a Dreyfus student, same thing, I want them to go to an open house. I want them to find out about all the different departments, and then I want them to ask themselves 3 important questions. These questions are: what am I best at? What am I most passionate about? And where do I fit in the best? And when they answer those questions, they're going to know exactly what department they belong in. And that is the department that you want to put as your first choice. Really important that your first choice be your best choice, because people don't always get into their second choice, because you have to take your first choice if you get into both. So just keep that in mind. Definitely take advantage of those tours and those open houses. And think about perhaps putting, instead of 2 Dreyfus or 2 Bach departments as your first and second choice, think about perhaps looking at a different magnet program as your second choice. And we can talk more about that when we meet in person. That brings us to our next topic, which is the Plan B. It's really important to understand that even Ariana Grande was boxed out of Dreyfus. She auditioned for Dreyfus twice and she did not get in. So it has no bearing on your child's ability or talent. Some people, it's a subjective audition and it can happen. You could be rejected. So you need to have a really great plan B, and you need to discuss that with your child now so that they know going into this audition that they're going to be okay. No matter what happens, they're going to go to a school that is going to be awesome for them and they're going to love. And that's going to help them, believe it or not, that's going to help them have a much better audition because you're going to be more relaxed about it. The power and importance of preparation. This is a big job preparing for any of these auditions. There's a lot of work just walking into the room, preparing your mindset, knowing how to talk to the judges, knowing how to interpret your material, knowing where to look. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. It's a big, big job. Your child needs the support in order to have the best audition possible, to be the most confident that they can be. They need really consistent preparation, preferably between 4 to 6 months at a minimum of preparation, weekly preparation to really feel great and prepare for these auditions. There's a lot involved in preparation, and I'm not going to go into the details for each department because I could be here all night doing that. But kids in general, they don't respond well to parent coaching. There are some exceptions to that. I've met 2 or 3 families where the parents and the kids were able to work together, but that is totally the exception to the rule. My job is to free the parents of that stress and that burden. I am really, really quite an expert in this, and I will certainly involve the parents appropriately, but it is my job to be your expert. You can just hand your child over to me, and I promise you, I will give them every tidbit that they need to have a successful audition. You are invited into the process with me, of course, but I'm really good at my job, so you don't have to worry and you don't have to fight with your child about any of this. I will keep them motivated and I will keep them on track for you. I don't recommend hiring more than one coach. It confuses the child. It is totally counterproductive to their success. So that's how I work. I want you to let your child, as far as audition prep, if I'm preparing your child for an audition, don't have 2 audition coaches. That's just going to confuse them. It's going to be a waste of your money too, so I really don't recommend that. Okay, so wow, we got through that pretty quickly. Do you have questions? I have answers, and the best way I can answer your questions is to set up a free assessment over the phone with me. It's a 20-minute call. You can also do it in person if you like, but I definitely want to be in touch with you so I can get you on my schedule because I really do only have a limited number of slots available for these assessments. So how to reach me and set that up. You can reach me by phone or text. There's my number. You can email me. And you can also, of course, you can message me on Facebook. A lot of people find me on Facebook, and that's a great way to chat with me and get that set up for yourself. You can see I have several auditions. I have several websites here. Awesome Kid Auditions is my audition coaching website. I do coach kids also, not just for Bach and Dreyfus. I coach kids for college, and I coach professional kids for auditions, and I work with agents and managers in preparing their clients so that they can have successful auditions and get those jobs, and everybody can make money and be happy. And the last website, melissaboerjacobson.com, is really where I do my public speaking and presenting coaching, so definitely check that out. Okay, so that's pretty much it for the slides, and we're going to focus on questions. Can't wait to hear your questions.